We have a lot to cover, but I want to set the groundwork here. The role of the Secretary of State is much bigger than just elections. But make no mistakes, elections are a key part of it. It is a constitutional office. The Secretary of State is second in line to the governor and the keeper of the Great Seal of New Mexico. There are legislative and executive duties, and if you have never been to the opening of the legislature, the Secretary of State opens the House of Representatives until leadership can actually be elected. No doubt, the Secretary of State is the chief election officer, and that includes overseeing and administering all state elections. The Secretary of State maintains a statewide voter registration system and also certifies voting equipment and precinct maps. The Secretary of State is the state government ethics regulator. That means this office oversees the activity of lobbyists, campaign finance reporting, administers the disclosure requirements, and also reviews the codes of conduct for each of the executive branches. In addition, the Secretary of State is the keeper of business and public records. That includes registering trademarks and service marks, maintaining the UCC and agricultural lien filings, overseeing all the notary public commissions, and providing public access to filings and databases. Now, this forum is going to be conducted, I think, in an expeditious manner. We're going to cover a lot of ground. So at this time, I want to introduce the individuals who will be joining us. First and foremost, we have Adam Hathaway, a registered parliamentarian, who will be moderating the questions and also inviting you at the appropriate time to ask audience questions. We are honored to have timekeepers, Jill Crowley, wave your hand, and also Linda Miller, and this is from the League of Women Voters, Central New Mexico, and we are very grateful that you are here. We have two of the three candidates running for office. We have Catherine Clark, who is the county clerk for Santa Fe County. We have Ramona Goolsby, who is on the board of directors of the Ciudad Soil and Water Conservation Commission, and also Amanda Lopez Askin, who is the county clerk for Doña Ana County. I'm going to tell you right now that the county clerk from Doña Ana County was always a maybe. If she comes late, we will dispense with opening comments and just jump right into the questions. And if that happens, we will all be extremely grateful. So there is a format. I did overlook some of the important things. First and foremost, should something happen, there are exits to your right and also to your left where you entered. The restrooms are out in the foyer where you entered. And again, we hope that you will stay and visit with our candidates because having been a candidate, these are incredibly brave, dedicated women and very, very interesting. And so with that, I would like to turn the program over to Adam Hathaway. And at this time, I would like to invite our candidates to the stage.
Thank you very much for that introduction. So I am a professional parliamentarian, and most people follow that statement with, what does that mean? You can imagine I'm the life of a party, and some people think it means I'm a rule monger, and I'm here to tell you that I'm not passionate about being a rule monger. I am passionate about equal access to democracy and equal access to the process. And I consider myself, and everyone on this stage, and all of you here, as practitioners of democracy. And so I'm so thrilled to be a part of it here because we live in a representative democracy, which is also called a republic. And in a republic, you use the republic to improve the republic. We don't use violence. We don't use uncivil discourse. We use the republic to improve the republic by using a civil discourse. And that is what we will be having this evening and what we will be promoting and enforcing in this 90-minute program. So we are doing a hard stop at 7:30, regardless of what occurs within that time. We are having a hard stop for this program at 7:30, and then, as we heard, there will be time for you to meet the candidates. The speaking order has already been determined by random draw. In just a moment, we will start with Ramona Goolsby of Ciudad Soil and Water Conservation District Board, and then second to speak will be Catherine Clark, the County Clerk of Santa Fe County, and then we will alternate so that no one person begins each question. We are going to begin in just a moment with a 3-minute opening and closing set of statements from each candidate. Then we have a series of prepared questions, about 5 to 8 of them. Those will be 2 minutes per response. And then we go to the audience participation portion, which is composed of you writing any questions you might have on the 3x5 cards that have been provided to you. And then we ask that you hold the cards aloft, and our volunteers will come take them. And we'd like that completed no later than 7:10, no later than 7:10, and we can collect them earlier. And then each question that is asked by me and provided by you will be answered by both candidates. There won't be any questions focused on just one. We want to hear from both. And for the audience participation portion, that will be 90 seconds. So yes, that may feel like a lightning round, but again, there's a lot of ground that we wish to cover in this groundbreaking event, and so we want to take absolute advantage of that. And so we will begin with the opening remarks of 3 minutes apiece, starting with Ramona Goolsby of Ciudad Soil and Water Conservation District Board. And your 3 minutes begin.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to express my gratitude for the church allowing us to be here, for Janice Arnold-Jones, EIN, the parliamentarian, and the League of Women Voters. And I also want to thank you for coming out. As he said, my name is Ramona Goolsby. I live in Rio Rancho. I moved to New Mexico in 2019, doing contract work for the VA as a medical provider. I had just retired from ranching. I'd ranched for 40 years, small business owner, as I said, a nurse and nurse practitioner, and a veteran with the Army Nurse Corps. When I came to New Mexico, we came because my husband's family grew up here, and he loved it. This is where he wanted to be when we retired. So when we got here, we noticed that there were some things that weren't what I would call quite right. It was during COVID, during the 2020 election. I had not moved my registration at that point, but at the house that I had leased, we ended up with 7 mail-in ballots for different people. And so it just made me start to question. I realized that that was a very specific time in our history, that there were lots of things that were happening at that time that hopefully and pray that we don't ever have to experience again. But I started asking questions. When I did register, we had bought a house in Rio Rancho, and I wanted to become involved in the process because I think that that is one of the things that we as people need to do. Being in the military, we give an oath, just like many other people, to serve and protect. And part of that is exercising our right to vote. And so we did. Again, in 2022, there were many questions. And so I started volunteering, working the polls, doing research on data that was received from the Secretary of State's office and from Sandoval County. And through that work, I have learned a lot about the process here. And again, my name is Ramona Goolsby, and thank you very much for having me here. And I want to thank Catherine for coming.
Appreciate that.
And now with opening comments for up to 3 minutes will be Catherine Clark, County Clerk, Santa Fe County.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm Catherine Clark. I'm the Santa Fe County Clerk. I was born into a military family. I was actually born abroad in Germany, and then we lived in Spain in the early 80s. It was right after Franco had left power, and I think that a lot of what I see in terms of democracies and the struggle for democracy across the world really informs why I am so interested in making sure we protect it here for New Mexicans. My parents were very hardworking. My mom left home at 16 to really forge ahead, and she really taught me that we need to make sure that we protect others, we need to serve our community, and it's not going to be easy, and so you have to be tough. And that's one of the things that I think is really, if you work in elections, I see actually 2 election offices here, you know that elections are tough. And the reason why elections are so tough is that no matter what happens, you have to make sure that that election happens, because the people who are voting depend on you to make sure that you get that election across the finish line. And those who work in elections know that it's a little bit of an adrenaline junkie kind of job, because we are so determined to make sure that we serve our constituents and make sure their vote will count. I have about 25 years of experience working in the election space and in public service. I used to run campaigns, and so I'm very familiar with the rhythm of elections, and had a small business. So I'm also very interested in the Secretary of State because of all the improvements I'd like to see for our business community. In Santa Fe County, as your county clerk, I have modernized and professionalized our systems. I've been recognized for building one of the highest performing election operations in the state, in a state that was ranked #1 in the country. And despite the complexity of being rural and urban, tribal, mountain communities, polling sites 90 minutes apart in either direction, under my leadership, Santa Fe County has always reported on election night and now finishes first among the large counties. And because I never ask my staff to do something I'm not willing to do myself, I'm the only person in New Mexico who holds both the National Election Administration certification and the State Election Administration certification. I think, okay. Feel very privileged to be here. I would love to chat with you about elections. I'm a super election nerd and talk too much, so I always run out of time. But I'm very glad and very privileged to be here, and I'm excited to talk about all the great things we're going to be doing in the Secretary of State's office. But I will say that I'm looking forward to modernizing the Secretary of State office, making sure it serves everyone, and protecting the democracy that we hold so dear. Thank you.
And this brings us to the portion of the program with the first set of questions with a 2-minute limit per candidate. And the candidates have informed me that protocol having been satisfied, I may refer to them as Ramona and Catherine.
If you know me really well, it's Kat, so.
Please, whatever you do, give the moderator multiple instructions. So starting us off in a moment will be Catherine and then Ramona. So Catherine will answer this question first. What are your top 2 or 3 priorities as Secretary of State, and how will you measure progress?
Absolutely. I'm running on a platform of 5 points. Defending democracy, I think there is a lot of pressure and executive overreach. We're seeing a lot of attempts to essentially what we would call executive overreach on our elections. States and local election offices run their elections. They know their constituents. They know who their voters are, and it's always worked out well. So having a desegregated offices all over the country that do things slightly differently is actually how we protect elections. The next is expanding access to the ballot. Relative to other states, we actually have pretty low turnout, and I would like to make sure that just like we did in Santa Fe County, we are making sure that every voter who wants to have access to the ballot does. I want to run trusted elections. I want to work with our coalition of county clerks, ensure 100% election night reporting, and have real turnout transparency so that people can follow along with the election to know that what they're seeing posted on election night makes sense with those who voted. I want to reduce the influence of dark money and private equity in elections. We see increasing amount of money that's coming into elections from actually outside of the state. I want to expand public financing for campaigns so that the little guy can run for office. I want to make sure we're expanding transparency around campaign finance reform. I want to expand transparency around the influence at the Roundhouse. And I want to continue to modernize the Secretary of State's office. What we have seen is that we have done a lot of modernization of our statute, but we need the infrastructure that is to support that election to also modernize so that we can realize the things that we say that we want to be a reality on the ground. Thank you so much.
And now, Ramona.
Thank you. As I've called around the state and talked to the many people, the number one thing that they are concerned about when they talk with me are voter rolls. They are extremely concerned about voter rolls not being as clean and pristine as they should be. And I think that that's very important. It's important because we do have the technology to do that. Again, I agree, upgrading technology is extremely important. And one of the things that I have done is worked with a national organization on analyzing the voter rolls. And we have found multiple errors. And so making sure that people have confidence that whoever's registered to vote is eligible to vote. Again, I really appreciate what Catherine says about increasing technology and making the system more modern. I think we have a long way to go in that aspect. I also agree with transparency. I think that most of the documents that we have to request as public should be allowed to be on the public website that can be searchable. I agree with ethics. We currently have an issue with campaign finance. And I think that that needs to seriously be addressed. Thank you.
And now for this next question, Ramona will go first and then Catherine. And the question is, what currently works well in New Mexico's election laws and procedures, and what should not be changed? Ramona.
That's a really good question. Thank you. Right now, I feel like the voter registrars that we have are amazing. I am really proud that we are able to register online as well. I think that moves us into hopefully the 21st century, and I do believe that that system works well. I believe that the county clerks work very hard at what they do. And as far as other systems that work well, I know that when I send an IPRA request, there are times that that does work well, although there are times it doesn't. But we do have a system in place for that, and I think that is very important. Other systems that work well, you'll have to let me think for a second. Yeah, I appreciate being able to go to the county clerk and talk with her and talk with Joey, and I think and I hope that that is the way it is with every county, and that is a system that I think works really well.
Catherine.
I, as a county clerk, of course, am very biased, so I think the county clerks work very well. They do an excellent job of making sure that they are supporting their communities, that elections are executed in a way that has high trust. Most people I know love their county clerks and think they're the heroes in their life, and that's a good sign that the county clerks are doing their job to make sure that their constituents can vote. I think the notary system works really well. We actually just updated it to allow people to do a remote online notary, which is a modernized piece of notary that's not just elections that the Secretary of State's office does. And of course, I would like to make changes to make it even better, but I think we're moving in the right direction. The business system, we've actually seen a drop, and it was taking about 3 months to get business filings across, and now we've seen that drop down to about 9 days. So I think the business filing system works better. Of course, I would like to be able to search by other things like your registered agent in the system, but I do think the business filing works well. I think the idea that we would allow people to utilize voting in multiple ways really works well in New Mexico. People can choose their own path and how they're going to vote. They can vote by absentee or mail-in ballot. They can vote early, and they can also vote on election day. They can vote at any of the voting convenience centers around the state, around their county. And I think that's really important because it means there are multiple paths for people to be able to vote, and I think that works really well. It's one of the reasons why we are ranked, or were ranked #1 in elections, and we're not ranked because we dropped so much. It's just because other states got competitive, and now we need to make sure that we are also increasing our competitiveness to go back to #1. That's something I'd really like to work on as Secretary of State, but we do a good job in New Mexico.
And for the next question, Catherine will start, and then Ramona will answer second. And that question is, what is the biggest problem in New Mexico's election system, and what would you do in your first year to address it? Catherine.
I think it's kind of a combination of funding and then the infrastructure on which our elections are based. We made a lot of changes. I think we had more changes legislatively in the last 5 years than we had in the previous 50. We added expanded access. We changed how we do absentee voting and expanded the volume because of COVID. That was a byproduct of COVID. We added automatic voter registration. We added same-day voter registration. And that means that our voter registration system needs to do a lot of stuff. And I do think that there is a need to improve our voter registration system where it's not based on the street file model anymore. It's based on latitude and longitude. It has different layers to make it easy for us to move voters into their correct districts. It can do more. It could have instant texting to voters to let them know that their ballot needs to be cured. There's just things that we can do to modernize our systems. I also would like to make sure that every polling site is actually 100% powered, whether the power goes down or not. Something we do in Santa Fe County is we actually put a battery pack on all of our tabulators. So even if the power goes out or even if the internet goes out, we have backup systems. And I do think that we should think of elections as a patient on life support. At least I think of your vote as a patient on life support. And I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that it happens. And what I want to do as your Secretary of State is make sure that we are putting all of these resiliencies into our system so that even if something fails, we will make sure that you will have the opportunity to vote. And that's something I'm very passionate about. Thank you.
Ramona.
Yes, could you repeat the question? Thank you.
What is the biggest problem in New Mexico's election system, and what would you do in your first year to address it?
Thank you. As I said, when I talk to constituents, when I talk to voters, the #1 complaint I get is voter rolls. People are concerned. And I think in the first year that we should go ahead and look through, modernize our voter rolls, use quantum computing, and help the county clerks and the Board of Registrars go through and make sure all of our voters are eligible, that the addresses are correct. Currently, from the analysis that I have obtained and looked through, there are over 787,000 incomplete data sets on our current voter rolls. We have 3,800 people who have passed that are still on the voter rolls, and we have over 116,000 people who have moved. These are things that are very concerning to people. The other thing that I would like to see addressed, again, is transparency. I feel that people, when they feel they can get the information they need and are a part of the government, they feel more confident. They feel like they can go and vote with confidence and that that will count. And I'm excited about making that happen. I am also, again, I appreciate the modernization of the business filings. I think that is a very important thing. And we also need to look at CFIS, the campaign finance system. That system has glitches, it has problems from the back and the front. Candidates know this. There are a lot of filings that are not correct, that have to be changed. I've had to go through the Ethics Commission to get part of that done. Thank you.
And that's time. Thank you very much. Before this event started, I spoke with the timekeepers and I asked them to do something. I said, if one of the candidates asks for a question to be repeated, please do not take that repeating of the question off of her time. We're in a rapid fire situation and some of the questions are rather involved. So for those of you doing your own timekeeping out there, that's what's going on. For this next question, Ramona will answer first and then Catherine, and that question is, with more write-in candidates requiring hand counts, what support should the Secretary of State provide to counties to ensure timely and accurate results? Ramona.
Thank you for that question, and you are exactly right. We have a lot of hand counts that are going to have to occur this year. Yep. In 2022, we had a write-in statewide candidate, and I know from a fact, I was there, there were difficulties because the proper instruction was not necessarily given in all circumstances. They had to get court orders to open up ballot boxes in many, many counties. And so I think as a Secretary of State, you're the leader, and you need to make sure that all of the clerks and the workers understand the limitations of the machines. Those machines only hold about 150 to 200 in the slot, and they have to be opened and those pulled out. Otherwise, they get diverted into the wrong container. And I think it is a matter of education. I'm excited that we have people that want to have a write-in vote. That's part of democracy. When people see that there is a void, when they see that there is a place that needs to be filled, they step up. And I'm proud of that. But again, more education, more direction, more funding would probably be very helpful for that, because I know that the Secretary of State's office is underfunded, and hopefully can help pay for some of these workers that may, extra workers that may be needed. Thank you.
Catherine.
So I actually love hand tally and write-in. I worked with my vendor that does our ballot on demand system and created a hand tally system that's a machine-assisted hand tally system. And what that system does is it takes two bipartisan teams. They visually tally themselves the ballot, but it keeps the votes keeps track of the vote, and then a second team verifies. It's how we get in our county, instead of having a pattern of where we have to go back and double check all of our hand tallies and write-ins to make sure that there was not error. We know there's not error because we have actually done a machine-assisted count where we're comparing the two teams, and we know for a fact that we have 0% error. It's something I think that this election we're considering using. There's discussion of doing 2 pass to make sure, well, 3 pass essentially. The standard write-in protocol for such a large volume of people who are running statewide means that the write-in ballots will go into the tabulator and then get diverted into a diverter bin. And as Ramona mentioned, it's only 150 to 200 votes. In counties with high volumes of people who are going to be voting, it means they'll have to interrupt the voting, clear out the diverter bin, and then put those ballots aside. The second option is using the hand tally system that I devised, where we would take out the ballots, right, and do the same idea where we'd divert the ballots, put them in a stack, and then we could use the hand tally system to ensure 100% accuracy on those hand tallies for the write-ins. And then finally, there is a discussion about having the ballots just actually go into the regular bin, and then we would actually use the same system we do for absentee adjudication, where a team of 2 people who are different parties sit there and adjudicate the ballots. So that way we would actually be adjudicating off the ballot images in a way that would actually be more accurate, because the tabulator itself is only diverting a certain amount of write-in on the line, that's the write-in line, and when you adjudicate using the adjudication machine, you can actually set the tolerance differently, and so you could actually look at every single ballot that might possibly have an attempt to write in.
And that's time.
So thank you.
The next question will be answered by Catherine first, and then Ramona, and that question is, what standards would you require for testing, security review, and rollout of election-related software before it goes live statewide? Catherine.
So we already have a system for this. It's actually when the Secretary of State is looking at new equipment, and they do have to upgrade this next cycle. We are due to upgrade our machines because they're long in the tooth. Some of those machines are starting to have a problem because they're about 10 years old. So we're going to be going out to RFP, and then once different voting vendors respond to the RFP process, then it goes to what's called the Voting Systems Change Committee. I sit on it with other county clerks, and then we review those systems for accuracy, for the features that we want, and make sure that we're meeting all the security requirements that we feel that we would need. And the Voting Systems Change Committee is the one that decides which systems are going to be used by voting systems. There's an effort by the Election Assistance Commission, that's the federal commission, that has raised the bar in terms of the security level, and they're going to a 2.0 level. And 2.0, 1.0 doesn't really matter to you, other than we are increasing the level of security requirements that they need. I also sit on the EI-ISAC, which is a consortium of election security officials and secretaries of state. I represent the local election officials. I was elected by 1,300 other counties, and we do a lot of monitoring to make sure that the internet, any ways in which the internet or security is involved with the election. You might know that our tabulators and our tabulation center doesn't talk to the internet, but there's a lot of different ways in which we do actually talk to the internet. Our ballot on demand systems at the polling sites are talking across the internet, and we're constantly monitoring to make sure there's no risk to our elections when we are conducting an election. And finally, I would actually like to put all of when we are certifying tabulators, I'd like to put all those certificates online. Why not, right? Everyone should be able to see them and flip through them. We should be as transparent as possible. I think that when people can see these documents and see these things, they're just going to have a lot less questions about what is going on and what's happening in elections. Thank you.
And that's time.
Yes, and again, please repeat the question.
I know that was a lot.
It is a lot.
What standards would you require for testing, security review, and rollout of election-related software before it goes live statewide?
Thank you. I would require what is currently, at least what is currently in statute, that we adopt and start using VVSG 2.0. Mm-hmm. That system was adopted in 21, and we were supposed to have followed that system since that time. There were not any testing labs at the time when it was rolled out, but over the last 2 years there are testing labs, and our equipment is not certified to that. Cybersecurity is a really big issue. And because our system is connected to the internet, the service system is connected to the internet, we are very susceptible to outside forces because of that. I think that certification and constant monitoring by cybersecurity is extremely important. I know that in 2022 there was a cyber hack, and the Secretary of State's office was notified, and we were informed that it didn't affect anything, but it's just to show that that does happen, and it happens all over the country. And when you have a system that is on the internet, no matter what part of it you make the whole system susceptible. And so looking at ways to make sure that we don't become victims of any type of cybersecurity threats is most important. I agree with showing the tabulator testing online. I think that's great. Other places that do that, and I appreciate that answer. That's amazing. Thank you very much.
And for the next question, Ramona will answer first, and then Catherine will answer second. And that question is, how would you balance voter convenience with election security? Ramona.
I think that's a really great question. Voter convenience enables people who may not normally have the time to vote or take the time to vote. It encourages them to participate. But on the other hand, people want to make sure that their vote is secure. Early voting is one way that people feel it makes it more convenient. Am I for election season? I think that elections are carried out too long. I think that is part of the reason why we have such a large have to have such a large budget, because of all of the expense for the extended time. There is a way to shorten that time. Also, we need to look at security. And one of the things that I have been asked many, many times is about voter ID. That is nationally an 80-20 issue. And what I have found in New Mexico, it is also an 80-20 issue. People feel that it's important that who stands up before the clerk is who that is. I know that in Rio Rancho, we have voter ID in our municipal elections, and it is not an issue or a problem. I've worked in the clerks in regular elections. People come in and they want to hand me their card. And I tell them we don't need it. They're really actually appalled at that. But if that makes people feel safe, then...
And that's time.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, this is the age-old question in elections. How do you protect security but also make sure people have access to the ballot? Well, I am someone who likes to err on the side of access to the ballot. I think it's a tragedy when someone who had the right to vote doesn't get a chance to vote. In New Mexico, we do amazing things to do that balance or to navigate that balance. When you have an absentee ballot, you have to put the last 4 of your social on that ballot, and that's how we verify that it is you who's filling out that ballot when you either drop or mail it back to us. We also have, of course, a very robust cybersecurity program in the Secretary of State's office. We monitor the internet traffic and make sure that voting systems all systems go without allowing traffic that is not supposed to be there. We also, of course, reconcile. So once we've all voted, we make sure that every single ballot that was cast was the expected ballot to be cast. We go through a canvassing process at the county clerk's office, then at the Secretary of State's office, and then we actually do an audit where random precincts are drawn in every county, and they have to actually hand tally all of those ballots to prove that the results that they got on election night are the results that they have as a way of backing up what we say the election results were. In Santa Fe County, we did something we won several national awards for, which is we actually put a accelerometer or GPS tracker inside of all of our tabulators as a means to show that those tabulators are not being jostled overnight and they're not being dealt with overnight when, because as early voting is going on, the tabulators sit there overnight. And we were hearing sort of conspiracy theories about that maybe people are affecting the tabulators. And so we actually put a device in the tabulator to prove that that is not happening. So there's lots of ways in which we can increase security without impacting people's ability to vote. One of the things I will say is that we do already have voter ID in New Mexico. You have to identify yourself. The problem with photo ID is that it's very challenging. We all know from Real ID that our viejitos had a really hard time proving who they were and couldn't get the right kind of ID. Thank you.
For our next question, Catherine will answer first, Ramona will answer second, and that question is, do New Mexico's mail-in and permanent absentees voting policies strengthen or weaken election integrity?
I think that they strengthen election integrity because in New Mexico, you sign up for permanent absentee, and then you're allowed to be on the list, but we actually send you mail throughout the election cycle. The first thing we send you is notice of elections, right? That's like all your polling sites and the hours and times, and you get that from your friendly county clerk. And then we actually send you a postcard, and if the postcard bounces, and there's various reasons why the postcard might bounce. You might have forwarded your mail, you might have put your mail on hold, and the reality is you can't trick the election office. You cannot, forward that mail to someone else. You have to have an active address where you're getting that ballot, and if that postcard comes back to us, we cannot send you a ballot. Once you are put in inactive, you have to correct it with us before your ballot can go out. If you don't end up voting in the election, then we actually automatically remove you from the absentee voter list. I think the absentee voter list is a great way for older voters or people who are differently able to be able to vote, and we have security systems in place to make sure that we have a robust protection around making sure that ballots aren't going out willy-nilly, but also that the people who want those ballots can have them. Thank you.
Absentee voters, and I'm sorry, go ahead and repeat the question.
Do New Mexico's mail-in and permanent absentee voting policies strengthen or weaken election integrity?
Thank you. I believe it weakens election integrity. And the reason I say that is because the mail system is probably the most, it is the largest precinct without chain of custody. There is no one who oversees that. There have been cases where ballots have been found on the sides of roads. There have been ballots that have not arrived. There have been ballots that have gone to the wrong house. I can tell you that for sure. And so using the mail-in ballot system is not as secure as the public deserves. Permanent absentee voter list, in theory, is great. And there are reasons for absentee voters, for sure, and I support that. But I think having a permanent list without some sort of routine evaluation, I don't believe that that's a good fit. Because like I said, we already know that there's 3,800 deceased people. We already know there's 116,000 people that have moved. And they're still getting, they would still get ballots. I think we need to review that. I think the public needs to have a say in that as well. Thank you.
At this time, I would like to remind the audience, who, by the way, has been practicing outstanding decorum during this presentation. I definitely appreciate it, so please continue. I would remind you of the green cards with the pen on them. Those will allow you to submit your own questions, and we ask that you have them ready to go and raise them in the air before or by 7:10, so we can move to that portion, at which time they will be quickly reviewed. And again, questions will be for both candidates. No candidate will be singled out for any question. And for the next question, Ramona will answer first, Catherine will answer second, and that question is, what should the Secretary of State's relationship be with county clerks and the federal government on election administration? Ramona.
Thank you for that question. I think that the Secretary of State's #1 relationship should be with the county clerks, with every one of them, because they are the people on the ground that have to administer the election. I think that when any bills are presented, or any rules are changed, I think they should be the first ones that are consulted on that. The relationship with the federal government, the Secretary of State's office is the state's election officer. She does not answer to the federal government. The federal government is over the U.S. congressional, the presidential, vice presidential. The Secretary of State decides on, by law, the manner and the way in which we conduct elections. We also have federal statutes that we must follow, right? NVRA and HAVA. And so we do work with the federal government, but as far as someone saying that they are over our elections, they are not. The Secretary of State is the state election officer. Thank you.
Thank you. I do agree with Ramona that the clerks is a very important relationship. You're going to be having to work with 33 county clerks, all of whom are a little different, with different communities. And your job is to provide guidance, to pass administrative rules, as well as work with your legislature to pass laws. And the Secretary of State is sometimes caught between what the clerks want and what the legislature wants. That's a theme we see over and over again. As someone who is the chair of the legislative committee for the clerks affiliate, I feel like I have a very good relationship with my county clerks. My deputy is actually the clerk affiliate chair, and we are always working with the Secretary of State and working at the Roundhouse, working on that, delicate relationship between what works in one county may not work with another county, and also, trying to make sure that we are also making sure that everyone has uniform rules on how to conduct an election so that everyone has a fair access to the ballot. On the federal level, I'm very active in the National Association of Counties. I'm the election subcommittee chair, and we certainly are very aware of sort of the change in tone of this administration, and we believe that there should be uniform laws passed by Congress, not necessarily the executive branch, and they should direct the Election Assistance Commission to set certain standards. However, what works for one state does not work for another state, and we believe in that idea that the Secretary of State is the chief election official and should be working with our legislature and local communities because they know their communities and should be conducting elections in a way that makes sense for those communities while still maintaining that balance of uniformity. It is one of the hardest jobs, I believe, because you have 33 county clerks, and if you know county clerks, they're a feisty bunch, and then you have the legislature, and trying to balance all of those forces to make sure that the people have the right to vote is a very challenging endeavor. Thank you.
For this next question, Catherine will answer first, followed by Ramona. And I will be unsurprised if this one requires a repeat. Uakava Uniformed and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act, voting military and overseas voters, increased significantly in the last presidential election. Should Congress change Uakava rules, for example, by creating a separate military category or requiring prior physical residency in the state claimed for voting, why or why not?
So Uakava, military voters, people who live overseas, I actually do not think that we should start making separate categories of voters. It creates an opportunity to divide voters, to make special rules for voters, to make it harder for certain categories of voters to vote. I do think that if people are voting in the same manner, just like you're overseas or military, you should have the same rules. As someone who lived abroad as a military brat and watched my father vote every election, I would hate to think that we are creating more barriers for the people who are serving or the people who are the younger generation of people who have gone abroad and would not be able to vote. There is a lot of, I think, feeling that somehow there is fraud around those who are living abroad, but there are a lot of ways in which people have left this country and are still paying taxes. They are still being represented by people in this country and should have the right to vote. And I think that when we start making divisions among people, then there's an opportunity to essentially divide the services that we're giving them or somehow make one group have one barrier or not. And so I'd be very nervous about separating those categories. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead and repeat.
Uakava Uniformed and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act, voting military and overseas voters, increased significantly in the last presidential election. Should Congress change UOCAVA rules, for example, by creating a separate military category or requiring prior physical residency in the state claimed for voting? Why or why not?
I don't believe that they should make a separate category for military. I think that I agree that uniform rules usually work better. I also believe that if you're going to vote in a state, that you should be have vested interest in that state. I would hope that you live in that state and want to know about those candidates. So I believe that having citizenship or residency in a state should be a requirement. As far as UOCAVA and veterans, I have talked with several veterans organizations, and they do feel unfortunately, that sometimes their votes don't get in on time or get counted appropriately. And I just want to make sure that our people that are serving understand the process, that I even believe that the UOCAVA votes or ballots have already gone out, I think. So we want to make sure that they do have a voice. And so if there's anything that we can change to make that happen, I'm all for that. I think we need to look at more information before I make any more of a judgment on that.
The next question will be answered by Ramona first and then Catherine. And that question is, how will you recruit and retain poll workers, especially in understaffed counties?
I get to go first, yeah. That's an exciting question. I don't know if we need to turn it into a party or what we need to do. I want to make sure people are excited about voting. I talked with a neighbor and she said, you know, we used to, as a family, go down and vote, and our neighbor was there, she was working the polls, and it was a very happy atmosphere. And I want people to understand that that's the feeling we should have about working our polls, serving as watchers. You know, it's not just a duty, it's a privilege. I know that workers are paid. I think they're paid well. I think we just need to do a little bit more as far as getting the word out that it is a good position to have, that you get to meet your neighbors, and I'm excited about it. I enjoyed working. I've worked the polls several times and met people, met my neighbors, so making it a sense of community, which voting should be. It should be a sense of community. That's where our laws affect us most, is in our community. So participating in your community is the most important thing, and I think advertising and letting people know it's available.
Thank you. So I have some ideas for that. In our county, we actually have an over 95% retention rate of our poll workers. We usually get about 1,400 applications for only about 350 slots. One of the things we've done, and actually it's featured in the Election Assistance Commission's Best Practices Guide, is we do a debrief, right? We let poll workers know that we are interested in their experience. We debrief them at length, and we figure out how we make the election experience better every time. And that's one of the things we've learned. When poll workers feel valued and feel like their opinion matters, we actually see them come back because they feel like, okay, I'm going to be listened to, and what my challenges last time are going to be resolved. And what we do is we work with our staff. We identify 5 things we can improve every election, because elections are iterative, and then we improve it. One of the things I think we should be doing is making sure that it's easier for student poll workers to work. You know, one of the things we always see is that people age out of the system, right? They get older and older, and then they don't want to work anymore. And so we should make it easier for young people to volunteer and be paid to work as student poll workers. And then finally, the other thing is, I was floating this idea, and this may be a little too radical, but the idea is that maybe you don't have to do jury duty if you serve as an election official. I guarantee you, people would sign up for that and be very likely to want to work in their community and help people vote rather than serve on a jury. And of course, certain judges did not like that idea. But I do think it's one way, especially in communities that are having trouble recruiting poll workers, a great way to essentially, you know, recognize that working the polls is a community service. Thank you.
For this next question, Catherine will answer first, and then Ramona, and this is the follow-up question. What statewide training standards will you require for poll workers?
Okay, so every county clerk trains their poll workers a little differently, but there are standards set by the Secretary of State. I think when the Secretary of State is a little too heavy-handed, then they are not seeing all the individual differences between the clerks and their unique communities. I do think there should be materials provided. I think that there should be templates provided. I think there should be software that is free to use for the county clerks to use, because what we're seeing is more and more the county clerks want to put things online for people to take it home and kind of learn and get quizzed on, and then go to the training and do hands-on training, right? You know, since COVID, we've really seen kind of that hybrid model successfully worked in different communities. I think the Secretary of State should send a checklist of topics that need to be covered, but allow the county clerks to train their poll workers in a way that makes sense for their community, the hours that make sense, because every community is a little different, and I think when we try to just be very heavy-handed, Bernalillo is not like Tobacco, right? Otero is not like San Juan County. And we need to make sure that we are recognizing the diversity of New Mexico in these communities, and that the county clerk knows their communities and needs to be able to sort of have a checklist, have tools, have funding to be able to do it, but we're not making it so heavy-handed that it makes it very difficult for them to administer their election. Thank you.
Yes, and I agree. Using templates and software to provide uniformities, especially when it comes to state statute, so that everyone on that election floor understands and knows what the statute is, and then letting the clerks take that information and customize it to their particular area and their particular county. It's very important. That's how you get workers to buy in, because they know it's local. They know that their county clerk's there to support them, and their county clerk to help train them. Having online tools is also very beneficial. A lot of learning anymore goes on online, so I think that is a great idea as well. Thank you.
For this next question, Ramona will answer first, and followed by Catherine. What are your non-negotiables for ballot and equipment chain of custody?
Thank you for that. I have had a very difficult time getting any type of documentation on chain of custody when it comes to ballots. I know that when I worked in 24, that they were taking the SIM cards out of the tabulators and sending them with a runner without any chain of custody. They knew he was, but he was alone. And so, I think that chain of custody is extremely important. Anything can happen between here and there. When the clerks or the judges at the center close down, everyone's there with them, everyone's watching, they sign off on the papers, they take all of that information, they have someone with them that follows that information, and I think that's the best way as far as chain of custody for the ballots. I was really disheartened when I saw those SIM cards leave the polling place without anyone else beside that young man. And he was gathering them for everyone so they could report totals early, which isn't right. So chain of custody as far as documentation and people going together with those ballots, with those that equipment, I think is extremely important. Thank you.
So Santa Fe County is known to be the tech geek county. So we actually put a GPS tracker on all of our bags that transport chips or ballots already. And that's one of the ways in which we make sure that, actually we've had people get lost and we've had to go find them because sometimes the cell service isn't good, but the GPS is very good. And we've had to go send someone to get someone who got stranded. I think that in terms of chain of custody, we don't always have technology, but I do think we should make it easy. accuracy, where there's barcodes and asset management, so we can make sure that ballots and chips are checked in and out by a bipartisan team. There's GPS tracking that goes to the central location, and then they have to be checked in again. And we make sure that we have an estimated time of how long it should take, and if the person's taking too long, we can check in with them and make sure that doesn't make sense. I think that when you have a technological system, it has to have a paper backup, right? So that way, in case something goes down, you always have a backup plan. And also you should have reporting, meaning that when someone requests chain of custody or at the end of the evening, you should have it already ready to basically print reports, so that way you have documentation of what happened. I also think that, what we do is the idea of the ballot box key, we actually consider a seal to be a ballot box key, and something we already do in Santa Fe County is we actually send the district court judge all of the seals, and as they're being checked in and out, to make sure that that judge can see as boxes were opened and closed and transported, all the seals line up. And that's something that should be the ideal for every county. Of course, people make mistakes. Humans are humans, but we can get to that goal of making sure that we have a complete chain of custody. And one of the things we're doing in our county is we're looking at some of the drop boxes having actually an ability to check in that ballot, read the barcode, so we would have a complete chain of custody for that absentee ballot process. Thank you.
For the next question, Catherine will answer first, followed by Ramona, and that question is, how will you reduce vendor risk when buying, certifying, or deploying election technology?
Sure. Me first?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I actually think something that's happening in the election vendor world, which is interesting, is we're seeing more and more consolidation of election vendors. That may be because there's been more lawsuits or there's more perceived risks, so they're kind of getting together in these consortiums. So one of the things I thought was very strong about the idea of defending against the idea that there's a massive conspiracy of election fraud is that different states do things very differently. They have different rules around elections, but they also use very different vendors. What we're seeing is more and more vendors are starting to consolidate. So one of the things I would like to see happen at the Voting Systems Change Committee is that we recognize that maybe not one vendor should do all the different aspects of the election. So whether that's ballot on demand, whether that's the tabulator, whether that's other software that we're using to conduct the election, it might be better if there's a diversification of the vendors, so that way it's that argument that one system can be hacked is a lot weaker. Right. So that's something I really like to see happen. Also, I do think that we should make sure that we're talking to DoIT, which is our technology agency, and making sure we're working closely with them to have a security protocol that we're testing, because I do think that, while I do trust that our vendors are doing everything they can, I do think that it's always good to have a buddy system that will check also to make sure that the vendors are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and making sure that we're monitoring how we are acquiring, where the information is being stored, what's going on. I mean, one of the things we still do in New Mexico is we still actually have the hard copy voter registration cards, and I don't see any reason why we need to have those anymore. We can put them in a system that's secure, because Bernalillo County has thousands of them. It's a lot of time and effort, but we would need to have a system that is very secure to make sure that system is a natural digital equivalent of having things on paper, but it is possible as long as we had the right vendor. Thank you.
Right. And go ahead and repeat the question. Thank you.
How will you reduce vendor risk when buying, certifying, or deploying election technology?
Thank you. I agree. There have been a lot of consolidations. I know that currently Dominion, which is what New Mexico used primarily, has been purchased by Liberty Votes, who also is in charge of the B-Pro system, the service type system, which is the voter registration system. And so I think I agree, a separation of those, where if you have one system, if there's a system susceptible, not all systems are susceptible to hacking or whatever issues there may be. Diversity of vendors is a great idea. I also think a competitive bid instead of sole source contracts. Most of the vendors in our state with elections have been sole source contracts, which means there have not been any real competitive bids on these systems. I also agree that, we work well with the county clerks, that they should be a part of that process. I think that would make them more comfortable and feel like they have the ability to control what goes on in their county as well. It can be difficult if you have too many different systems within a state. Then you really do have issues with, I would say, commonality or how to keep things equal on all stands. So yes, consolidation, we need to remember that diversity is our friend in that. Thank you.
For the next question, Ramona will answer first, and then Catherine. And this moves us into the audience participation portion of the evening. And so the first question from our audience, and thank you very much for participating in this civil discourse. Like I said, Ramona will start and then followed by Catherine. Why is it so easy to register to vote, but so difficult to get off the voter rolls? Why is canceling registration only paper-based, Ramona?
Well, I don't know why it's so difficult for people to get off. I know that when I removed my name from the voter roll in Oklahoma, that I submitted a card and it was taken off quite easily. I have not tried to unenroll in New Mexico, thank goodness. I'm here for the duration. But it shouldn't be a difficult process. And I know that we're supposed to have a contract with a organization that's supposed to help us with people who have moved. I haven't seen that it's been real effective. That would be Eric. But I'm hoping that by getting in and addressing these issues, we can make sure people are able to get off the voter rolls if that's what they so choose to do.
Catherine.
Thank you. So I think let's explain a little bit about the NVRA, which is the National Voter Registration Act, also known as the Motor Voter. In 1993, we passed it, and it was supposed to be this idea that you could register to vote in MVD offices, and that would assist people, a natural target audience for registering to vote as they were changing their address for their vehicle. Part of that is that you have to actually not vote in 2 elections and have a piece of bounced mail go out to you before we can remove you from the voter roll. So actually, there's a lot of barriers, and rightfully so, that we can't just willy-nilly remove you from the process. But I think that's just a choice in New Mexico. I do think that we should have an online removal form where you actually use your last 4 of your social and you can get yourself off the rolls. In the ERIC program, we've actually moved ERIC from being kind of an outside vendor to being within the voter, basically the county clerk's dashboard, and we're actually seeing more frequent updates from ERIC. So hopefully we will see better data quality coming in the voter registration system, and you'll see as people are moving out that they will be flagged by ERIC and we can remove them. But I also think that one of the great things we have is the NCOA, which is the National Change of Address, and I would very much like to, if I know someone has left, I'd like to send them a friendly postcard and an online form QR code that they could quickly remove themselves from their voter roll. I think that should be part of the sorry to see you go, but please return, but please also unregister to vote here. Thank you so much.
For this next question, Catherine will answer first, followed by Ramona. Rules were not promulgated for DTS, declined to state, voters on the permanent absentee list. The guidelines require going to a portal to request the correct ballot. Doesn't this disadvantage older voters?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes. I think they're trying to see what, we were going to go through one primary process to see what works and what doesn't, and then promulgate rules based on that. I think the runway was way too short to promulgate rules. And also, we don't know how necessarily, what the pain points are going to be. That's the problem when you're making administrative rules, is sometimes you learn in the field that what rules you thought were ideal didn't actually work that well. So I think the Secretary of State's office is trying to see how this first go-around goes. It does disadvantage disadvantage or early voters. And I think that there should be a way to, of course, county clerks are available. If you call your county clerk, they will help you with selecting which ballot you want. But since COVID, we've actually seen more and more people have a lot more internet savvy. And because you can register for an absentee ballot online through the Vote portal, it just made sense to also include a way to select which ballot you want as a decline to select voter or an independent voter. But I would like to see that the county clerks have some additional tools, especially for those voters who do not have access to the internet. Thank you.
Ramona?
Yes. I agree that this does disenfranchise a lot of the older voters that do not participate online. I know that when we do registration, they prefer paper ballots. And as far as having a short runway to this, we've known about it. And even if you have basic rules set forth, those rules can always be updated through a process. The county clerks are doing what they can to explain how to get on and get an absentee ballot and pull that. We have been doing education for voters as well, showing them where the form is online, and it is online. You can help your elderly or a person who doesn't have access to the computer to pull that, and they can choose their ballot. The form is easy to use, it's easy to mail, but again, we fell short and didn't get the rules so everyone got the same orders, marching orders, as far as giving direction to voters.
And for the last audience question, because following this, each of the candidates will have up to 3 minutes for their closing remarks. So this is the last question. Ramona will answer first, followed by Catherine. And the question is, if the SAVE Act passes, how will you protect the Native Americans' right to vote, because most Native Americans do not have original birth certificates or passports? Ramona.
Thank you for that question. If the SAVE Act passes, I believe that as Secretary of State, it is our duty to go out and figure out with the tribal governments how we can make that happen. Looking at Indian, the Native American cards, their government-issued cards, working on a system with the federal government, because the federal government has to understand that these populations need to be included and they need to be part of our voting system. So if we're making it difficult for them, then let's get together and let's figure out how to make that happen. And that's one thing that I really like to do, is get people together, let's sit down and let's figure out how to make that happen. Thank you.
Catherine.
Well, I think the SAVE Act is officially dead. I think they announced it in the Senate, and with good reason. We were in the Senate about 3 weeks ago lobbying our Republican votes, actually, because all the Democrats were against it, but we needed to have 1 or 2 Republicans to make sure we effectively killed that bill. And the reason why we want to kill that bill is it will disenfranchise tribal voters. They do not have original birth certificates, they do not have passports, and those are the only 2 documents that you can use to register to vote under documentary proof of citizenship, and you have to do it in person, which means it is easier to get access to a national nuclear facility than it is to register to vote under the SAVE Act's rules. Those who are particularly vulnerable to documentary proof of citizenship are tribal voters, and there would be no alternative path. It wouldn't be tribal ID, it wouldn't be tribal birth registrations. Many people in New Mexico do not have passports, so it would be extremely challenging. 1/3 of married women would have been disenfranchised by the SAVE Act. So while I think people mistake the SAVE Act for photo ID, it is actually extremely difficult to register, and everyone would have been automatically removed overnight from the voter rolls and then had to re-register. So you can imagine what TSA looked like a few weeks ago. Imagine that trying to register to vote. So we are very glad to see that the sanity prevailed and that we will not disenfranchise tribal voters in New Mexico. Thank you.
And for closing comments, if there's no objection, I will ask Ramona to go first, and then followed by Catherine. And timekeepers, this one's 3 minutes, 3 minutes each. So, Ramona, would you like to go first?
Yes, thank you. Again, I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight and participating. This is a true display of participating in your government, finding out about the candidates, and participating in the process. That is what we need more of. I am very glad, and I want to thank Ms. Clark for coming, because I think people need to understand that we do have differing views on things, but that we can have civil discourse and we can discuss this, and later on we can sit down and actually talk about solutions. I believe that not being part of the government, being an outside person, not a politician, I think is a very good part of the resume for this job. I think that being able to work with businesses, with counties, with ag departments, with all of the people that have to be worked with, I think that not being politically biased in that sense and part of a political system, I believe that I'm the best candidate, and I'm going to ask that you vote for me in the primary and again in the general election. Thank you.
Catherine.
Thank you. Thank you to my fellow candidate. And thank you all for listening to us talk about elections. I could talk forever, but you guys will get very tired of that. I think that this job is going to be critical. The person who takes office January 1st, 2027 will have to run a presidential election in 2028. And they may have to run a presidential primary even earlier, because the Democratic Party has applied to be one of the first states out the gate in the 2028 presidential primary, which means that person has about 8 months to get a presidential election ready to go and across the finish line, to make sure all the vendors are lined up, to make sure the new voting machines are acquired, to make sure all the county clerks are aligned, to make sure the county clerks that are coming in are trained. It is going to be extremely challenging, and I am up for the challenge. I am the #1 election administrative office in the state in terms of metrics on turnout for large counties, in terms of 13 national awards. I sit on several national committees. I am the person who has made sure I have actually done things that the Secretary of State's office has already adopted. Things like the hand tally system, things like a computer program so that challengers can actually watch voters checking in real time, so that there's more transparency around those who are looking at the voting process. I've done things like making sure that there are emergency plans. There's this idea of the emergency absentee board. It was a bill that a fellow senator and I proposed in the State House, and while we couldn't get it across the finish line, the Secretary of State liked some of those emergency aspects so much they actually adopted it into administrative rules. I'm already leading in the Secretary of State's office. I work very well with the county clerks, and I am ready to do this job. And what I am focused on, truly, is making sure that your vote counts, making sure that democracy is defended, and making sure that this office truly serves everyone. No matter who you are, and no matter where you are in New Mexico, I want to make sure that that office feels like it has thought about me and has made sure that my vote will count. Thank you so much.
Let's give a round of applause to our two candidates. So I will wrap up my portion here, and then following that will be the final wrap up, and then the evening will be over. I wanted to thank the Election Integrity Network for putting this together. Let's give them a round of applause. To do something that has never been done in New Mexico before. That is the practice of democracy, of coming up with better ideas of how to increase audience participation, and as a means, see how much trouble I can get into, as a means to gauge candidate investment. There were a number of messages that you saw tonight that were not spoken. The first message is, who came tonight? The second message is, have we ever seen a cleaner civil discourse? Let's get a round of applause on that one. I would love for our national and state leaders to comport themselves in front of the public eye in the way that these candidates have tonight. So I say to you in my parting words, as we are all tonight proving ourselves to be practitioners of democracy, when you go out there, state your case. Disagree all you want. Disagreement in a republic is fantastic as long as we disagree without being disagreeable. Thank you very much, folks.
We're going to let you leave the podium. I will speak about you for a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, are our candidates amazing? Could you please give them a really warm send-off? They are going to the lobby, and I hope you will take a few minutes to greet them after we adjourn. So I would like to thank our hosts, Calvary Chapel, Rio Grande Valley. Is this a lovely facility? Golly, and I bet most of you could hear us. Is that cool or what? It's very good. I want to thank our moderator, Adam Hathaway. You did a tremendous job. We really appreciate it. Thank you. You cannot host a forum without timekeepers who are paying attention and making sure that it's fair. I'd like to thank Jill Crowley and Linda Miller again. Thank you so much. Thank you to the League of Women Voters. And most importantly, thank you. Thank you for caring about our elections so much that you would come this evening and spend your Tuesday evening with us. We are so grateful, and I hope that you will take this back, and maybe we will get to do it again. But for right now, I bid you safe travels. Please join the candidates in the lobby. Thank you, and good night.